All right, so what is artificial intelligence? Oddly enough, I'm finding there's a lot of people who use artificial intelligence like ChatGPT almost every day, and they have actually very little understanding. A lot of my students have very little understanding of what it actually is. I mean, in part that's because it's hard to understand, and I'm going to give you a real simplified explanation that'll probably drive, if you're a computer engineer, drive you nuts. But it'll get us into, I think, thinking about it accurately, which could be important because when you think it's something else, you can think, for example, that it's doing things that it's not really doing, and you could be unaware that, for example, it's not a thinking thing. It doesn't itself think or work like a human mind. You'll forget maybe that it's programmed, things like ChatGPT, to ingratiate itself to you, to flatter you, to try to get you to engage with it. So I think it's important to just remember that it is a machine, it is a computer, it is not a human being, it is not your friend. But what is it? It is, of course, artificial intelligence, something like ChatGPT, Claude, these other large language models. They're a kind of artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not new. It's older than these large language predictive text models. Artificial intelligence, for example, is like the predictive text in your text messaging. You type in a message, it's guessing what the next word is. So that was a kind of artificial intelligence, and it was programmed as a single application to do one single task. And the TikTok algorithm is a kind of artificial intelligence. It's programmed to watch what you do, what videos you like, and then try to feed you videos that it thinks you will like based on your activity. Your Spotify feed is a kind of artificial intelligence. Even just the random player on the old, if you had old Apple Music, or what was it called, iTunes, when you would hit random and it would randomly select songs from your music library, that was a kind of artificial intelligence. So all of this is to say that before large language models, and this is still the case today, we have these hundreds of little applications that do a single function, and those were considered and are considered to be artificial intelligence. So large language models, though, are kind of in a class of their own when it comes to artificial intelligence. They're way more advanced than these older kinds of single task applications. So with large language prediction models like ChatGPT, they are much larger in terms of their algorithm, their program, the software that is required to run them. They're much larger in terms of the hardware that's required to run them. Takes these giant databases that are sucking energy, burning oil, destroying trees and water. Those are databases that require that hardware to run in order to run these giant programs, these giant applications. And what we get is what we have right here. Okay, so this is like ChatGPT, let's say, and it's one single program, a giant, astronomically large computation, right? An algorithm, a computer program. And that computer program was created originally by human programmers, but then those human programmers taught the program how to program itself, right? And through a process that's called machine learning, as you feed the machine more information, it takes that information and then begins to adapt and change its own algorithm, right? We call that machine learning. And so what you see in this image here is all the data that's being fed in to the algorithm. It's training the large language model, and then the large language model is learning, it's rewriting its own program, and ultimately, when it's all said and done, you have something that's called a generative AI, large language prediction model, like ChatGPT. And now instead of having a bunch of different programs that do each a single disparate task, we have one giant program that's capable of doing all kinds of different tasks, from answering questions to analyzing things to generating images, as you've seen, of course, in your use of these various different tools. Okay, in the end, what it gives us is an illusion of a mind, right? And when we interact with it, it's programmed to interact with us like a human interlocutor, like a human partner, right? And so it gives us the feeling, the illusion that we're talking to another human being. But it is not a human being, of course. It does not think, it does not experience, it does not feel, it does not know. What it does is generate or predict, right? And so similar, that's a funny face, similar to the text message prediction, right? Where text prediction models, where you type in a few words into your text draft, and then the smartphone guesses what it thinks the most likely next word is going to be. That's basically what ChatGPT is doing at a astronomically, mind-blowingly sophisticated level. You type in a prompt to ChatGPT or any other large language model, it pulls from all of it runs that algorithm that was based on the analysis it did on all of that data in order to basically say, with this prompt, what is likely to be the best possible output that we can give, that ChatGPT can give. And it generates that new output. And you could think of that output as a guess. It's predicting what it thinks the best outcome would be. It's not going back and searching a database and finding the best possible information and then bringing that forward. It's generating, it's creating something new. So it is not traditional research, right? And in a previous video, we talked about the research process. Traditionally, for humans, right, is we start somewhere in the present tense and we search the archive and we go further and back into the archive trying to find the original context of information for whatever it is we're trying to study, right? If we are studying an historical event, we are going back into the archive and trying to find information as close as we can get back to that original event. We find that information, we pull it forward. We, the human being, read that information, that maybe it's a diary, and then we use that information in the whatever it is we're writing, right? It could be a paper, it could be a speech. So it's kind of a retrieval process. Generative AI is not retrieving anything from an archive. The archive was used to program it, but when it's putting out an output, it's essentially guessing. It is not going back, finding an article, pulling that article forward, reading that article, deciding what information from that article it should put in its output. It's not doing that at all. It's producing a guess, and admittedly, it is a uncannily accurate guess quite often. It does it really well to the point where it makes it feel like it's doing a traditional search when it's not. You might be asking, well, what about this thing called retrieval augmented generation? You're probably seeing now in ChatGPT, or even when you just do a Google search, you'll get the AI output. In Google, it's called an AI overview. And then it's providing with some links to some web sources that are linked to that particular output. And that's called retrieval augmented generation. Basically, it's combining your traditional search engine with the large language prediction model output. And that has helped to create a more accurate output for some of these models, but it still has some problems. For example, sometimes the things that it links to have nothing to do with the output that it guessed. And sometimes it even gives you bad information. So we'll talk about that in an upcoming video. It has, according to some reports, improved the accuracy of the performance of large language models, but even retrieval augmented generation, I would say, does not qualify as traditional research. In the next video, we're going to talk about some of the key problems that you see here.